The problem with Oregon and their fans is they think they're on Ohio State's and Georgia's level, but they're not. And truth of the matter is they're not even close. There's levels to this, and I don't want to be too corny when I say this, but they're not on their level. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, hope all of you had a great week. Hope all of you had a great Friday. If not, hope this video can make it a little bit better. If you're not excited or you're not having a great end to your week, I don't know what to tell you. You're an Eeyore off of Winnie the Pooh. You're a Debbie Downer because college football, it starts tomorrow. And I know what some of you are going to say. Well, Matt, it's week 0. We don't have many games or really any great games at that, but college football is college football, at least in my eyes. We survived the offseason, and man, oh man, some of you are going to know what I'm talking about when I say this. But it felt like just yesterday I was telling you guys, look, you're going to go to a couple barbecues, you're going to go swimming a couple times, hang out with your buddies. Next thing you know, you're going to look up and season's going to be right around the corner, and here we are. I don't want to sit up here and say the offseason flew by, but this one didn't seem as long as others in the past. Anyways, moving along here, we got to talk about what in the world is going on with Georgia and Oregon. Good old Georgia and Kirby Smart, love me some Kirby Smart by the way, and the Ducks and Dan Lanning. I think we're all in the same boat here, we'd agree on this. 2 really good football teams and 2 really intriguing teams. Let's start off with Georgia first. Last year, I don't want to say it was a disappointment, but it didn't end the way you'd hoped it would. I personally felt like Georgia had the better team than Alabama. I thought even when the season ended, they was one of the best 4 teams, but that's why we play the games. Georgia was fantastic last year, but we're not here to talk about last year. We're here to talk about this year. The good news is you have your starting quarterback returning and one of the best quarterbacks in the nation, Carson Beck. Carson Beck is excellent. Period. The end. That's all that needs to be said. If I can keep things short and simple, that's what I like to do. Now that I think about it, I guess Georgia fans are in weird territory because when's the last time you've been extremely confident with your quarterback heading into a season? That's one thing I've always stated. If Kirby Smart could eventually figure out the quarterback position, that was going to be a scary team because they was competing for championships and they didn't know what they were doing with the quarterback position. Running backs are solid. You got ETN, Roger Robertson, and Branson Robinson. At the wide receiver position, this is where things get a little interesting to me. I would say Dylan Bell is going to be one of your better ones, and also Arian Smith. Is it Arian Smith or Arian? I believe it's Arian. If I'm saying it wrong, I do apologize. There's a couple other wide receivers that I think should be pretty good, but the one guy I love, and he reminds me of Brock Bowers, ironically enough, is Oscar Delp, your tight end. I don't want to sit up here and say he's going to be the next Brock Bowers, watch out for him, but he's one of the better tight ends in the nation. Offensive line is looking solid, but that's always one unit that's extremely hard to predict how they're going to do heading into a season because you really don't know how they're going to gel and mesh together until they start playing some games. I'm going to remind you all of this. Heading into last year, people were stating the Alabama offensive line might not just be the best that season, but it might be the best of all time. And if you watched Alabama's offensive line last year, you know dang well, they weren't just in the middle of the pack last year. They were below average. And matter of fact, you can make a legit case and argument that that was Alabama's biggest detriment was the O-line. And it's crazy because people said that was going to be one of the best offensive lines of all time in college football history, and look how they turned out. On the flip side of the ball for their defense, fun fact for you. Last year, Georgia finished 12th in the SEC for tackles for loss. That is one of the more surprising statistics I've seen. The funny thing is, Georgia was so good last year, them not being great in that category, it didn't even matter. One player to keep your eyes on is Mikael Williams. He's one of the better players in the front 7. I believe Georgia actually calls it a front 6, but, you know, it's just stereotypical to say front 7. I don't want to say the secondary is a question mark for me. It's more so of how good can they be or will they be. Right now, I think they're going to be fine, but as we all know, that's not the standard at Georgia. They want to be elite, excellent, great, whatever you want to call it. I've not seen Georgia's schedule, so let's take a look at it. Starting out week 1 hot with Clemson, and this is what I like to see. Top teams playing other top teams. Clemson and Dabo Swinney is sort of on the downfall, but I expect that to be a good matchup. I tell you this much, we're going to find out way more about Clemson than we are with Georgia. No, I'm not going to give you my early prediction for that. You know how we do things around here. I'm going to save that for next week. After that, you got a cupcake with Tennessee Tech. Shout out to Tennessee Tech for the free Dubski. Then you got Kentucky in week 3. A little early SEC action, and that is a night game. Don't sleep on Kentucky. Remember, you know their quarterback is, right? Former Georgia quarterback Brock Vandagriff. I wouldn't consider that an easy game, not by any stretch of imagination. Then in week 4, you got big and almighty Alabama. Alabama is Georgia's biggest nightmare. It's every Georgia fan's nightmare because it's their kryptonite. For some odd reason, Georgia just struggles with Alabama. It's like when they play them, they get extremely nervous and they don't play their game. Maybe they were just petrified of Nick Saban. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But man, oh man, I tell you what. If Kirby Smart loses to Kalen DeBoer in his first year, Georgia fans, even with those 2 national championships, they're not going to be happy. This schedule's pretty hard from the start because after that, you got the rival game against Auburn. Look at the first 5 games. Clemson, that's tough. Kentucky, I wouldn't say really tough, but I wouldn't say it's an easy game. Alabama, tough. Then Auburn. If you know, you know. Auburn could be riding a 20-game losing streak. They're always going to play Georgia and Bama tough, so I'm considering that a tough game. After that, get Mississippi State, and I forgot they played them too. They got to play Texas. Georgia's got one of the tougher schedules I've seen. Then they got Florida. That's a rival game. Oh my goodness. Ole Miss? Wow. And then after that, you got Rocky Top. That's a top 15 team, at least for now. Tennessee, Cupcake. Shout out to Massachusetts for the free Dubsky, and Georgia Tech. And I can't say that's a cupcake. It's Tech. They're okay. Let's count all the harder games. 1, I won't even count Kentucky. Bama 2, Auburn 3, Texas 4, Florida 5, because Florida has really good talent. Ole Miss 6, Tennessee 7, and yeah, we'll just say 7. I won't count Tech either. That's tough, man. You're going to Bama, to Texas, and to Ole Miss. If I was a Georgia fan, which I'm not, I wouldn't be worried, not even to the slightest, because you have one of the best teams in the nation. And you also have what I'm going to label as the best head coach in the nation in Kirby Smart. It's kind of weird to say that because for the past 15, 16 years, the best head coach, and it hasn't even been close, was Nick Saban. But since I had Kirby Smart at 2 on my list, I now got to bump him up to 1 since Saban retired. The one thing I love about Georgia when covering them is it's very similar to Alabama. They're almost like Alabama 2.0, and I mean that in a good way. It's so easy to preview and predict their games because you know what you're going to get. It's not like, and we'll say for the sake of this video, Clemson, since they play them in week 1. You don't know if Clemson's going to show up every single week, but with Georgia, you do. Love me some Kirby Smart in Georgia. If you're a Bulldog fan, you should be feeling really good and confident heading into the season. I would love to talk about them some more, but we got to talk about the Oregon Ducks. Come to think about it, have we talked about Oregon this entire offseason? I don't think so. And depending on how you look at it, that could be a good thing because when I was growing up, my granddad always told me sometimes no news is good news. Everyone's extremely high on Oregon, and I'm not going to act brand new and act like I don't know why, because I do. Really good head coach in Dan Lanning, got the great quarterback in Dylan Gabriel. By the way, when is Dylan Gabriel going to get a job? The dude's pushing 30, still playing college football, but that's besides the point. Different rant for a different day. And you got 2 star wide receivers in Tez Johnson and Evan Stewart from Texas A&M. I'll get to the wide receivers in just a second, but that's why people are high on them. In the offensive line, they're great. I shouldn't have to sit up here and explain it, but I'll go over it real briefly. Dylan Gabriel, you know he's going to be great. He should be. It's his 9th year of college football. Tez Johnson, outstanding. Evan Stewart, that's the guy to circle. I think he is one of the best wide receivers in all the nation. And a reason a lot of people haven't heard of him up until this point is because at A&M, he didn't even have a quarterback, really. There were so many guys going in and out there getting banged up at injuries, he could rarely get in rhythm. And even when they had a quarterback out there and he got open, they couldn't get him the ball. It wasn't last year, but a couple years ago, Evan Stewart diced up that Alabama defense. He was frying them. And I'm here to tell you, if Evan Stewart had a quarterback within these past couple of years, he'd had 1,500 receiving yards easily. But he didn't, and this year we know he's in a great offense to go off, and he's got a great quarterback. Tight end position looking solid. I personally like Ferguson. As far as it goes for running backs, it's kind of pick your poison. You got the Noah Whittington kid and also Jordan James. I'm not going to sit up here and rant and rave on their offense. It's Oregon. You know they're going to score about 40 points per game. Let's talk about their defense. They have the best defense in the country. Oh, wait a minute. You're about to go to the comment section and say, Matt, I don't agree with that. That's fine. You don't have to because that's not my opinion. That is coming from Tez Johnson. Yeah, that's right. You heard me correctly, buddy. I'm not stating that. Your own wide receiver stated that. Quote unquote, best defense in the country. And they're loaded. Obviously, he may be a little biased because that's his team, but I thought that was interesting he stated that. Don't get me wrong, I expect their defense to be really good. They got Jordan Burch coming off the edge. He's one of my favorite players, but best in the nation? I don't know about that. I am going to remind some of y'all they did get the #1 cornerback in the transfer portal, former player for Washington, and that's Jabbar Muhammad. That was a really good pickup, and I think he's going to help them out a lot in the secondary. Look, the defense is going to be good. I think they're, we'll say a top 20, top 15 defense easily. But as where it stands right now, I don't think they're anything special, not by any stretch of the imagination. Nothing to really get excited about. What you should be getting excited about is the offense, that's for sure. The defense is more so of, just get us a couple of stops and we'll go out there and outscore the other team. That's really all there is to be said about Oregon, and let's take a look at their schedule. I haven't seen it either. Of course, it's going to be a little bit easier than Georgia's because they play in the sorry and sucky Big Ten. Pulling it up right here, and yep, I was right. I mean, what is this? Idaho, Boise State, and Oregon State. Look at this 3-game stretch. Golly. Talking about some cupcakes. That's 3 free easy wins to start the year, and then you got UCLA, Michigan State. But this is what I'm talking about. The sorry and sucky Big Ten back at it. Probably going to start out 5-0 and not even break a sweat. Finally, we get a real game, and they play the little bro, Ohio State. After that, it's back to the cupcakes. You got Purdue, they're awful, and Illinois, they're awful. Do got a decent test against Michigan, but we all know Michigan, they could be really good this year, or they could be really bad, who knows. Then it is back to the cupcakes. God, this is such an easy schedule. Maryland and Wisconsin. Man, I would love to play Maryland, Wisconsin, Illinois, but God, man, it's just free wins. And last but not least, you do got Washington. I can't say that's an easy game because Washington was good last year, but as we all know, they've lost everybody and lost their head coach. This is an easy schedule. They got what, at max 3 tough games? Actually, no, not even 3. It's just 2. Michigan and Ohio State. Unlike many others, I'm not on the Oregon hype train. They got to prove something to me. Same thing goes for Dan Lanning. I think he's a really good guy. He's a really good head coach, but he hasn't proved anything to me up until this point. I'll just come out and say it. I was trying to be nice. I don't take Oregon too serious. When I think of them, you want to know what comes to my mind first? Georgia demolishing them by 50 points, and they lost back-to-back games against Washington. And even if they would have snuck out a win against Washington and made it to the playoff, they wouldn't have done anything there. I'll give you a great example, a team that hasn't won the big game in a while. Ohio State. But still with Ohio State, I take them serious. I know Ohio State has a capability to win a championship, and they should have won one within these past couple of years. But as far as it goes for Oregon, no, I don't think they're on that Ohio State and Georgia level, not yet. The problem with Oregon and their fans is they think they're on Ohio State's and Georgia's level, but they're not. And truth of the matter is they're not even close. There's levels to this, and I don't want to be too corny when I say this, but they're not on their level. Maybe one day they'll get there and maybe they'll prove me wrong. I'm curious. Let me know your thoughts on all this down below. But Roman